Hey everybody, this is James and you're watching my channel CAD Roll Hunter. You know I'm always excited when I get pennies from my bank, but this time when I got a peek, I'm even more excited than normal because look who I see peeking out over here. I see George the Sixth, and when I flip that roll over, I can see him peeking out on that side. So I don't know what's in that roll or these rolls, but it looks like we've got a lot of older copper. And in this bundle over here, we see another George the Sixth here, and well, we can't see anything on that side. So I think we got ourselves a really exciting looking hunt. Hey everybody, thanks again for joining me. This is James and this is my channel CAD Roll Hunter. If you haven't already subscribed, please do that. I hope you enjoy this video. I decided we'd start with these paper wrapped ones, but because I don't want to leave you waiting too much, we'll start, I figure, with this one that has a George the Sixth ender. It's getting harder and harder to get pennies, but I just went back to the bank and they're like, oh yeah, we got some pennies. So I'm really super excited about this because I think we might find some really cool stuff. So let's get into it and see what we got. Well, I've laid out roll number one here and I'm just about to lay it flat, and I can see that we've got a dime in here. We'll come to that. I mean, if there's older stuff in here, and I see a lot of 80s in here, all those 12-sided edges. So I don't know if we're going to have silver, but you never know. So we'll just pull this down and we'll get a look at what our first ender is. And it's a 1947 maple leaf. That is awesome. And there's our good buddy, George. Yeah, so we can see it's not going to be a whole roll of George, unfortunately, but there might still be some good stuff in here, but we may as well take a peek and see what our dime is. And no, it's not an older dime. It is, well, it's a pretty decent looking 1984, though. We might set this aside. Well, it's definitely a find in our penny roll, and we'll see what else we got. We're just getting started with that roll, and I pulled up a 1979, and if you've been watching my channel, you know we found a bunch of double dates, 1979, where there's some die deterioration that is causing the 7 and the 9, and in some cases all four numbers, to exhibit some form of doubling. It's not a true double die, I don't think. It's more die deterioration, but it can be quite dramatic and it's really cool. A good variety to look for. This is clearly not it, so this one is destined for the Copper Cup, which looks like it's going to be pretty busy today because there's a whole lot of copper in here. Same roll, and I pulled up another 79, and you can see we've got some doubling here already, a double 7-9 variety. It's always a good idea to just turn it around and make sure it's not a shadow, but we can clearly see the doubling here on the base of the 7 and the 9 here and through here. So that's awesome to find one, and this one has a fair amount of mint luster on it still, so that is a great one to add to our pile. Same roll, and we got ourselves an older Lincoln Memorial. It is a 1961 Denver. So we'll put that on our finds here as the oldest and so far only American penny. And we may as well throw this 1978 under the scope because, of course, that's another one that could have the doubling. It's not on this one. We're just at the end of roll number one. We got a couple of finds likely here. So we have ourselves a Laureate Portrait. We'll flip it and see what we got here. Queen Elizabeth. It's a 1964, pretty common, but we'll add that to our board. And we've got a really nice looking 1976 here with lots of mint luster. We'll see if it's the same on both sides. That's pretty awesome. The one thing we can check for on the 76, of course, is if it has a rotated die. This one does not seem to, but it's a really nice one. So we will put it on the board. And I'll just note that we filled, the whole roll was copper. We didn't see anything newer than 1986. And Canadian pennies are copper right up until 1996. That bodes well for what we can see on the ends here. I hope it bodes well for what's inside these rolls. I'd love to find us some lots of King George the Sixth, and maybe a King George the Fifth would be fantastic. And some wheat pennies too, because we always find American cents in with our Canadian pennies. So we'll find out soon enough. Roll number two, and we found another King George VI. This was the ender that we couldn't see in the paper wrapped end. And it's a 1947. This one doesn't have the maple leaf. The maple leaf is a coin that was minted in 1948, but they were having trouble getting the dies. And so they just added the maple leaf so that they could distinguish which ones they actually minted in a different year. And so here it is, King George. That's our second one, which is awesome. We'll put it on the board next to our 47 maple leaf. And we're going to skip right into a pretty nice looking 1967. And of course, if you've been following my channel, you know that we can find a double die on this one. So we'll put this one under the scope. I don't see any doubling on the date. And so we want to flip it over and look to see if we find any doubling on the legend. There's some damage on there, but we would see doubling on Regina, which we don't. But if we've got more older copper in here, we might find more, and hopefully we'll find some more variations. Well, the very next coin is a Laureate Portrait 1962 we'll add to the board. I just didn't notice it as we were looking, but I might have to be judicious with what we film, because at this rate, we're going to be finding interesting things every second coin. So I'll bring you in when I find something really interesting. Still in roll number 2, and we have found ourselves something really interesting. We got another King George VI. This time it's a 1945. And there he is, and we'll add him to our finds. Just towards the end of roll number 2, and I pull up a 1979 here, another one under the scope. And again, you can see there's clear doubling under the 9 here, and there's a little bit under the 7. It's easier for me to see not looking through the camera, so I'm not sure how it's picking it up. You see a little bit of shadowing on the side of the 1 there, but definitely a double 9 and maybe a double 7-9. And just towards the end of the roll, we got ourselves another 1945. So this is shaping up to be a pretty awesome hunt. Roll number 3, and we have ourselves a 1961 Laureate Portrait here. It's our first 61 of the hunt. And just a few coins behind it, a 1963. So we've got one each of 61, 62, 63, and 64. I don't know if we're going to get a whole set of everything, but it's looking like we're getting a good spread of dates. Roll number 4, we got another George VI staring at us here. This time, it's a 1949. And it looks like it's in pretty decent shape. It's definitely brown, but I don't see much surface wear or scratches. Maybe not quite as good. There's some hair detail and some damage on this side, but that's a pretty nice looking coin for being over 70 some years old. Roll number 5, and we have found ourselves our second 1961 Laureate Portrait of the hunt. Roll number 5, and we found ourselves a 1965, and that means there's one of 4 varieties we can look for. I'll throw it under the scope. There are 4 combinations because there is a pointed 5, a blunt 5, as well as a large bead and small bead. And this one here appears to be the blunt 5, despite the fact that that 5 looks pretty pointed at the top here. The pointed 5 is almost on a 45-degree angle, so this would be considered the blunt 5. And to see the beads, we need to flip it over to the other side. And we're looking to see if the beads, the A in Regina, is pointing between beads or at a bead. So let's see. This one is pointing at a bead, not between a bead. You can see basically this A is pointing right at the bead. And so this is the large beads variety. So what we have is a blunt 5 large bead. And speaking of blunt 5s and pointed 5s, this is a 1985. This is the really common blunt 5. And this end of the 5 is really actually blunt compared to the 65. You'll remember we found a pointed 5 rare variety in one of my previous hunts. I'll put a link up there to that hunt. You'll want to check it out. And if we're lucky, we might find another one. I've only ever found the one, got it on video and shared it with you, and that was fantastic. But there's always room in the collection for another one. Roll number 7, we got another Laureate Portrait. We'll take a peek at what that is. And it's a 1962, but right behind it, we got a 1957, which is the oldest Laureate Portrait we've got so far. Same roll, and we just found a gorgeous 1972. This is definitely one we'll add to our finds. Flip it over, and lots of mint luster there. That's awesome. We'll add it to our bright and shinies. And speaking of bright and shinies, there's a really nice 1979, which we can also throw under the scope and see if we've got any doubling on the date. And not at all on this one, but that's a really nice example right there. Same roll, another 1963. Roll number 9, and we got ourselves another young queen here. This one, another 1964. In the same roll, just a little ways back, just another 1964. And right behind it, a 1962. Roll number 10, and we got our first US wheat penny. We'll take a look at it. We'll flip it over. And it is a 1944 Philadelphia. And this was peeking out just a couple coins behind it. This time, another 64. And just a few later, this one looks like it's in a rougher shape. It might be older, we'll find out. Not much older, just a 62. Still on the same roll. And this is an older one. This is a 1955. That's our first 55 of the hunt. Just cracked into roll number 11, and we are still doing well. We've only found copper cents in the Canadian cents. We haven't found anything older than 1996. We found some zinc US cents, but no steel and copper. And I'm bringing you in here because we got another Laureate Portrait in here. This one is a 64. And while we're here, we got another 1967, so we may as well throw it under the scope and see if there's any doubling. Nothing on the date there or on Canada, and probably nothing on here. So we've found a bunch of 1967s, but nothing with the double die just yet. Same roll, we got ourselves our second wheat penny, and it's obverse facing. We can see it's a 1957D, and there's our wheat ears right there. And if I can focus in, and just behind it, we see another Laureate Portrait 1962. Got some environmental damage on it. And same roll, just a couple coins back, we got a 1980 Copper Blazer. Roll number 12, we got our third wheat cent of the hunt. Let's take a peek and see what we got here. This is a 1949 Philadelphia. Same roll, we got ourselves another George VI. And this one is another 1947. And just a little ways behind that one, another 1962 to add to our finds. Same roll, and we're going to have a couple of finds here back to back because as I move the last coin out, this one rolled a little bit out of the way. So it's a 61 we can see, of course. And then this one right behind it is another 1961. And just one coin past those ones, another Queen Elizabeth, as young head as they say, a 1964. Same roll, and this hunt is heating up because again, I can see we got a couple here. We got, when I was having trouble making it out, it's another wheat cent. It's a 1950 out of Denver. And right behind it is another Laureate Portrait. And that's a 1963. Well, this roll really isn't slowing down. We got a pretty nice looking 1974. And then I can see right behind it another, that's a 62. And then right behind it is a really nice looking 1976 with a bit of toning on it. And just at the end of that same roll, we got another Elizabeth here. This one is another 1962. Roll number 13, another beauty here, a 1978. Again, we can put it under the scope and see if we've got any of the doubling on the 78, and we don't, so we'll keep going. Into that roll, we got a really nice looking one here. I'm not sure what it is. And it's a gorgeous looking 1978. And last coin of the roll, we had a 1979. Again, you can see we got another one with doubling on the 9 and the 7. There's a little bit of doubling on the first 9 here. So another thing you want to keep your eye open for, because they're really neat varieties. They're obviously pretty common, but if you don't have it in your collection or if you haven't looked for it, check through your rolls, check through what you've got, and see, you might just have one of these. We got another really nice looking 78 here in roll number 15. Sorry, roll number 14. Same roll. What's it going to be this time? Another 62. We're down to roll 15 here. And we got another 1963 Laureate Portrait. Same roll on our fifth wheat cent, just about fell over here. It's a 1957 Denver. We can get a better look at the reverse here. That's sweet. I don't think I've found 5 wheat cents in any one hunt before, so we'll put that with the rest of them there. And who knows, we got some more rolls to get through, including that double George VI ender. Same roll, and we got another wheat cent. It's really heavily damaged. You can just sort of see 1 cent there. It's got some kind of gunk on it. I don't even know if we're going to be able to make out what it is. And it's a 1935S, which is awesome. I'll have to look and see exactly how rare that is. It's too bad that it's got all of this damage on the back. I'm not sure. Oh, it looks like maybe some of that will just come right off. I don't know. We obviously don't really want to clean this coin. But that's an S minted wheat penny, and that is amazing. Roll number 16, and I got a 1965 under the scope here, and let me know what you think is happening here. This is a 1965 with probably what is a blunt 5, but it almost looks like the 5 is pointing back this way. It could just be damage, and you can almost see like a little shadow of something over there. Tell me what you think in the comments of this. This is, it just could be damage, but it looks different than any other 65 I found. And just to show you, I'll throw another one under here. You can see this one's got a pretty significant angle to the 5. And if I pull open another one here, I've just been pulling them aside. Same thing, that's angling to the right as well. So this one looks just odd. Let me know what you think. Same roll, we got another Laureate Portrait here to add to our finds. This one is a 1956, and we haven't found one of those just yet, so that's pretty awesome. All right, we are down to our last 4 rolls here, and they all have the same wrapper. They look to be wrapped the same way, possibly by the same person. They look to be about the same vintage. One's got a shiny 89, the other one's got an 83, and then we've got our double George Ender. I'd love to think that the double George Ender was a whole roll of George VI pennies. I don't think that's the case. I think it's probably just the way that it got filled. By the looks of this, if they're more or less the same, I expect we're going to find some 70s and 80s stuff in there. So we're going to do that one last, and we'll find out in a little bit. But we're going to start with this guy and see what we've got in here. Well, I laid it down, and this one's definitely not going to be all Georges, but there are some in there. I can see one right here, and I can see another one there that says George, and I thought I could see a third one just by its edge. So we're going to have some older things in here. So this is pretty exciting that we're going to find at least a couple and maybe more. Well, second coin in, and we got an older Elizabeth. Is it older, though? It's a 1959. Interesting that we know we've got some older stuff in here, and yet we have found our first cent that isn't copper. It's a 2002, and it's the newest thing that we found in here. The oldest so far had been a 1996. Okay, and it looks like things are going to get pretty interesting here. So we've got right here a 1951 with another George right behind it. And so that, oh yeah, a 1950. A 42, a 42, a 51, a 1950, another 1950. This is absolutely awesome. And another 1950 sandwiched with a 2002, which is just bizarre. And then yet another 1950. And another George, a 1942, and then again, another 2002, and then some other things. So I'll bring you back in when we get more, but that is an awesome find right there. I'll sort these out, and then we'll get back to this roll. So we just had to get through a few more newer zinc cents, and we're back into the George here. 42, 43, 40, 40, and then some newer stuff. And then again, another 1940, 1940. So a lot of 40s here. So this might have been somebody's 1940s George collection dub. None of them are in great shape, of course, so could have just been whatever somebody had. And I'll bring you back in if we find any more. Still the same roll. We got another 1963 to add to our finds. And we'll throw it right there. 75, an 80, and then here we go again. 1945, 1945. So a couple more. So we're kind of filling in a bunch of the years. So I kind of arranged them by 40s, 50s, and 60s. And we've got a bunch. There's two of the 47s here because that is the 47 Maple Leaf. But we might find more in these last few rolls. Roll number 18, this looks to be more of the same. It's just really strange. You can see some really shiny, newer stuff there. And then what appears to be some older copper. And I thought I saw a bit of a George edge on one of them as it rolled out, but we'll see what we got. Well, second coin in, we got another 1961 Elizabeth. And just a few coins later, a 1959. And then a 1958. And then a bunch of newer stuff. Same roll, here we go again. I see a 62. A 45 King George here. Another 62. And a 41. We didn't have one of those yet. And then some more new ones. Well, we've definitely got what must have been somebody's collection of older pennies, because I just looked at 5 or 6 1967s in a row, none of which had the doubling. But now we've got another 45 and a 46. Another 1959, a 43, a 44, a 48, a 58, a 49, and then a 2002. I think if we get that out of the way, there's a 42, a 51, another 42, 1950, and I always love adding older pennies to my collection. Even though these aren't all in the best of shape, I love finding older pennies. That's why I collect them, of course. 1941, 1940, 42, 50, and an 83, just for good measure. Roll number 19, and this is looking a lot like the last couple rolls here. We just got through some shiny new 98, 99, 2000s, and we're back on King George 1944, 44, 41, 39. This is our oldest of the hunt in the Canadian pennies. That is awesome. A 1939 penny. And another 39. This one a little mangled. A 59. A 52. A 48. We'll go through these pennies at the end because there are some varieties, particularly the 48. 49. 45. And we'll bring you back in if and when we find anything else in here. Same roll, we got ourselves another 47. 47. 47. 52. 52. 46. 47. 45. 47 with the maple leaf, which you can see right beside the 7, if I can get it to focus. There we go, that little maple leaf right there. And another 47 maple leaf. All right, we're down to our last roll, number 20. This is the double George Ender. And I think we have an idea what we're going to find in here. We're going to find some King Georges and some Queen Elizabeth Laureate portraits, and probably some 2000s and 1999s for whatever reason. But we'll get in and we'll find out. Well, this roll's a little bit different. It doesn't appear to have anything really new in here, but it definitely does have some 80s. I see some 12-sided coins on there. So this is our ender. We'll find out now exactly what it is. It's a 1941, 62, 51, 51, there's an 83, an 80, 43, so we got lots of King George in here, 43, 50, 43, 40, 51, 50. So this is almost a full roll of King George VI. 51, 43, 51, 51, 65. We can scope that bad boy, and it's another blunt 5. And right behind it was a 67, so well, you know, while we're already here, we may as well scope it and see if we're going to find any doubling. We haven't found any yet. Nothing on the date there. And nothing on the G's and Regina where you can really see it. But back in the roll, 42, 50, 45, and I'll bring it back in if we find anything else in here. Just a couple more coins in, there's another 59, and right behind it, another 59. And just a few more in, and we're back into the Georges here. 42, 43, and I think that was a 51, 51, and another 59. And they're all sprinkled in here now, so there's a 43. Another 65 we can throw under the scope. No, and it's not the pointed 5 necessarily, but back in the roll, again, another George. 42, 45, 43, a 40, and then a couple more at the end here. A 63 and a 51. Well, that's it. We got through all of these. I'll kind of stack these up, and before we do a full wrap up, we'll just look at any of the ones that have some varieties that we want to just check to see if we found anything interesting. The first variety we're going to look at is the 1947 Maple Leaf. We got 3 of them here today, and there are 2 varieties. There's a pointed 7 where you can see the end of the 7 is pointed. Makes sense. And the blunt 7, which has a very cut off end there. In the condition that we've got, they're pretty hard to decipher. Here's the first one, and it's hard to tell because of some of the dirt and damage. I think this is the blunt 7, where it's cut off there. It's not going right to a point, but it's really hard to tell because this isn't a pristine example. Pull another one up here. And this one, again, it's hard to tell because it's kind of rounded. I think this is the pointed 7. It's just lost its pointiness. And then the last one we've got here is probably, I think this might be the blunt 7. It looks like it doesn't come right to a point. So we found one of each at least, although they're not the best examples. Of course, one of the fun things about coin roll hunting and collecting coins is finding these kinds of varieties, particularly if you didn't even know you had the different varieties. The next variety we're going to look at is the 1948. We only got one of those, and there is a small denticle and a large denticle variety. This is the large denticle variety, and amongst the large denticle variety, there is an A points to large denticle and A points between. This one is very clearly the points to large denticle. It is a common one. The large denticle variety is the common one in either of the 2 varieties. It's really the small denticle that is the most valuable, but we didn't get that one. The next ones we're going to look at are the 1949s. They also have the large denticles, only the large denticles in this year. But what we're looking for is does the A point to or between the denticles, and what we want to find is the A points to the large denticle. That's the rare one, and I haven't looked yet, so we're going to look together. Okay, I pulled the first one up, and this is very definitely an A points between the denticles right here. It's not pointing to it. It would be very clearly pointing the denticle if it was the more rare one. So that's not the rare one. We'll pull up the next guy. And this is also pointing between the denticles. We got one more shot at it here. And this also appears to be pointing between. So we didn't get both varieties. The other one is certainly more rare than this one. So maybe next time. So notably absent on our board here are the 53 and 54. We got one 1955. Each of those 3 years, there's a shoulder fold or shoulder strap and a no shoulder fold or no shoulder strap variety. The fact that they're not here tells me that somebody might have pulled them out or thought to keep them because they might be potentially more valuable or include potential rare varieties. So the only one that we can look at is the 1955. And in this condition of the coin, it's going to be really hard for us to actually see whether or not there's a shoulder fold. And it looks like there probably isn't, but we don't have to rely on that. We can actually look at the lettering, because the no shoulder fold variety actually has flared letters, and the shoulder fold obverse has non-flared letters. So the I in the no shoulder fold would have significant serifs on it. And in the 55, it is the no shoulder fold, the one with the flared serifs, that is really rare. So this is the common 55 shoulder fold. There's actually a large denticle and a small denticle variety too. And so, I mean, I guess we can be looking to see if this is large or small, and I suspect this might be small. It's just a small, slight variation. It actually doesn't command any additional value. So we got a pretty common one. So I'll come back with a wrap up. All right, well, we almost need a wide angle lens here just to capture all of our finds. So we found a fair amount of US copper. We got this really nice looking 1983 dime, unexpectedly. We got a bunch of shiny copper from the 70s and 60s. We got a couple of the double dates in the 79, and we got one double date in the 69. But what we found over here was a huge collection dump of older Canadian copper. We found 84 King George VI, 2 of them in the 30s, those two 1939s. We got 58 in the 40s, and we got 24 in the 50s. And then in the Laureate Portrait Queen Elizabeth, we got 12 in the 50s and 30 in the 60s. So that was absolutely incredible. And to add to that, we actually got 5 US wheat pennies. So the 6 wheat pennies we got 2 1957 Ds. We got a 1950 Denver, a 1949, a 1944, and then the oldest of the bunch, this 1935S, which was just awesome. So this was a really fun hunt. I hope you really enjoyed it. Please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already subscribed, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel, Cad Roll Hunter. Check it out. We got videos coming out all the time. So please come back. Hope to see you again soon. Thanks for watching. Bye now.